And Jeannie, I'll monitor the waiting room. I'll just let people in throughout the presentation, so don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
My dog is under the desk and hopefully he won't see a squirrel and start barking. In fact, I'm gonna go shut the blind, so there's nothing to see. Haha. All right. So how many people do we have in here so far?
We have 10, including us,
Hi. Okay.
plus the dog, if he counts.
Yeah, Bentley, he's my teaching assistant. And he doesn't know it yet, I don't think, but I've got like a whole box full of treats on here if I need to get rid of them. But it's like once he knows about it, the getting rid is temporary. So, hello everybody and welcome. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad I'm finally in a place where I can say I'm glad to be here because you know those pre-presentation jitters can get to you sometimes. But I'm ready. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Jeannie Anderson, and I am an adjunct faculty development coordinator at Wabansie Community College, and I also teach English at ECC, Wabansie, and COD. And I work very closely with Lisa as an assessment cohort lead, and I'm about a year and a half into my 3-year commitment to that position, and I'm learning a lot about assessment through this process. So just a few pictures to share. So up here in the corner, these are my kids. I have 4 of them. There was a 4-month period where they were all teenagers at the same time. So I like to talk about them because they're really instrumental in my teaching process. 3 out of 4 of these kids have IEPs and are neurodivergent. So I have raised a child with autism and launched him. He actually took a semester at ECC and now he's in his 2nd year as an electrical apprentice. And then the mini me up here is my only biological daughter, and she is a junior. And then she's my normal kid, but she's probably the most high maintenance of them all. And then I have my 2 youngest daughters are adopted. They're 15 and 14, and one has dyslexia, and the other has ADHD. And so what I've learned by raising kids that are neurodivergent is that you have to be a risk taker and you have to be open to new ways of learning. And then here's a beautiful picture of my teaching assistant, Bentley, who is in my workout room here getting ready to beat me with this toy. That's usually what happens. And then to show you what a risk taker I am, the girls and I were in Mexico over the summer, and I actually let them without a seatbelt sit on top of this car. The 3 of them. And at some point we drove down into a canyon and we toured a little mining town. And so this is us on our way back. And you can see I'm a risk taker. I'm hanging by the seat of my pants, holding on for dear life. And like over here's like a cliff. And that's what it's like to be an adjunct. And it's also what it's like to integrate something like ChatGPT into your classroom. You don't know what you're going to get, but you're going to just put yourself out there and see what happens. So I live to tell. And so let's dig in. So my introduction to ChatGPT happened about 10 days after it came out back in December 2022. I was reading a paper, and many of you have probably experienced that feeling where you're like, you know, the structure's there. I can see there's paragraph development, but there's just something not quite human about what I'm reading here. The odd phrasing, the weird sources that come from the depths of, you know, East Asia at a Montessori school that, you know, whatever. Some didn't quite add up. And when I checked it, the works cited page against her annotated bibliography, because Scaffolding writing assignments is a great way to work against plagiarism with ChatGPT, because you see their writing process from start to begin to end. She only used one of her sources from her annotated bibliography, and nobody does that much work and then not use that source material. So I knew something was off. So over Christmas break, I started to think about, well, how can I teach my students about something that I know nothing about? And actually, we're kind of in a cool place as educators, because we're learning with our students, and they kind of know it, and they like being part of our learning processes as well. It's very empowering. And so I found this article that I haven't seen a reason to change yet, even though we're, over a year into our ChatGPT journey. But it was written by ChatGPT about why using it to write this opinion editorial was a smart idea. And so I still have my students read it, and we use it as the basis for our first discussion on AI. So the article's very like, these are the pros and cons of ChatGPT. And so I just asked the question, what are the pros and cons? And, the discussion goes really well from a standpoint of, all students kind of get on the same page. But they're really just sharing the same ideas with each other. And so there's forced discussion to get that full credit. And so when Justin Robertson did my triennial last semester, he gave me some tips on how to improve this particular discussion. And so I now start with, have you ever used or considered using tools like ChatGPT? And what's your experience? How does the use of such tools align with your personal values and learning approach? So I'm getting a more specific student tailored response instead of like the same canned, the pros and cons response. And I followed up with choose, two of these 6 questions. And I just delivered this new discussion in my Wabansi class, and found that 2 questions on top of the third one is too much. I'm getting really long responses, so I'm going to cut that down next semester. But so I want to get students' personal perspective learning about it, and then I also want just, a little bit of a differential question to get their response from. Um, in a perfect world, you might divide your class by 6 and assign people, but that doesn't always work either, because then the 2 people or 3 people who got question 1 participate, but maybe like the person who does question 6 doesn't. And so I just let them choose what resonates with them. So some of the feedback I got from this discussion, and I got to move my toolbar. Okay, here we go. Okay, you can't see my toolbar, but I can. Okay, so one student commented in this discussion that teaching students to use this technology will help them write an outline or give them ideas. Another student talked about having a cautious approach, because this student's aware that it shouldn't take the place of real learning efforts, and that this is a tool that can offer academic support. One student talked about, I can't really speak to this because I'm not a math person, but they got extra help with their math and econ homework, and it helped them better understand math problems. Now, I've heard they plug in the equations and they get the answers. So I can't really speak to, how effective that is, because it's not my discipline. But as the student said, it's a great tool for learning as long as you don't overdo it. So maybe the student had some math problems they couldn't figure out, and they use the AI to help get them over that hump because they get the immediate feedback. But they said they want to make sure that it enhances their understanding instead of replacing efforts. And then I love this one. My thoughts on the ethical implications are ChatGPT is more than unnecessary. So you always have your naysayer, which is great, because we need those opposing viewpoints to help us keep our perspective. And so these are just a few things that students are thinking about when they're using ChatGPT, or when they're getting introduced to it. I'm still surprised that so many students are commenting that they've never heard of it before or they've never used it. So that's interesting because the news kind of makes it feel like it's totally widespread. Okay, so the second discussion that I have with students is I show them this video, and I'm not going to show it here, but this first one about can OpenAI's chatbot pass English Lit. That's a really good one because it's a journalist who comes in acting like a high school student in an AP Lit class, and they can only use ChatGPT to interact in this class. And so it really kind of highlights to students in a fun way the inaccuracies that come with that can come with using AI, and so they have to be really cautious. I think we can still use it a little bit as a scare tactic, like it's not all true. I like to tell students that ChatGPT is like your best friend that lies a lot. So like lot of great engagement, but you can't always trust the information that you're getting. And then I like this video too, because it doesn't talk at all about academia. It talks about the legality of using ChatGPT out in the world. And so it really gets students thinking about um, what the legal implications are to using AI in real life, which is kind of, education, academia. It's all about getting students prepared for real life. So, um, all right. So before we move on, I would love to hear from you guys. In what ways have you incorporated ChatGPT or other AI software, either in your teaching practices or in your preparation practices or just personal use? So let's take a moment to see who has used ChatGPT in in this room right now. Okay, so I have heard from students when they are completing math homework, the math tutors are unavailable and they enjoy being able to get answers to tough questions so they aren't stuck. That's from Anne. That's a really good point. Um, that ChatGPT is what one nice thing about it is it does give that immediate feedback. It's helpful for late night study sessions with practice problems. Yes. Tyler has used it to generate examples for us to go over in class and has also used it to generate some helpful comparisons and explanations of tough concepts. Yes. Anyone else?
I use it for like some I don't even want to call it first drafts. Like, some of those like more formal things that you have to write and you kind of like the hardest part is just starting. So sometimes I'll just have ChatGPT start and then I'll completely pick it apart and make it my own. But it's always nice to get over the first hurdle.
For sure. For sure. Monica took a course and they entertained her whole office with songs about them. And it can be used to create assessment questions. Excellent. And improve a letter of recommendation. Yeah, we get those. I get those in my asynchronous classes. And it's like, I don't know you. Give me some bullet points. So I'll tell you one way I used it. Little Miss 16-year-old Jordan, my daughter, came up to me at like 9 o'clock at night one Thursday last semester and said, Mom, can you help me write this outline that's due tomorrow for my research essay on 9/11? And, clearly I was there for 9/11. I was in my 20s. But at 9 o'clock at night, I couldn't come up with anything. Or no, it's not that I couldn't, I didn't want to. And yet my kid needed help. And so we asked ChatGPT, how were Americans affected by 9/11? And of course, ChatGPT is telling me all the things I already know, but that just hadn't all come to mind as I was, helping her outline. And what we did with this list is I said, okay, why don't you choose 5 things that most interest you from this list? And so she did. She taught, loss of life seemed like something she wanted to talk about, the national trauma, which, may or may not, I can't remember if we combined those or not, but she came up with a list. She had to use all books. And so we went to the ECC library and we found a bunch of books on 9/11, and I hauled them home in two giant bags. And she did her legit research using books. And but she was able to kind of start, 15% in instead of right at the beginning. So that just gave her a great starting point to get that research done. So that is how I've used it in my real life. Okay, so what prompted me to oh, I switched this slide. Okay. So what prompted me to create the project that I'm going to talk about today? So last spring, I had this 12-week late start online class. And I probably had like 25% of the people in the class engaged. And even there, it was, I usually have pretty successful online classes, and I'm able to retain them, but it's always that 12-week class in the spring that can just sometimes be difficult. If I'm going to have a high rate of failure in a class, it's going to be in the spring in a late start. And I mean, students had just written a narrative. They'd written a profile about a person or place that they knew or enjoyed. And then we analyzed a film. Like, if you're going to be in a writing class, like, this is all fun stuff. And they're still dragging. And how I finish my courses is I always have well, I shouldn't say my courses, my English 101 courses, is I have a persuasive essay that they finish up with. And we start with an annotated bibliography as a paper so that they can use that paper to kind of help them do their research. And then they don't have to come, because in 101, you're constantly changing units and start coming up with new stuff. Whereas in English 102, your whole class is devoted to an entire research project. So I like to have those last two papers kind of work together. And it was supposed to be an editorial, and I'm worried. Like, I don't have students that are engaged this semester. And I also had a Monday night class at COD in Addison. And sometimes those off-campus classes can run small. And I only had 10 students in it. And I thought, I'm going to use this group of students to help me come up with something that will be more engaging for this online class that's really struggling. And I had this idea of, they all have careers that they're moving towards, that their goal in their education is to get to a career that they can be in possibly for the rest of their lives. So I created the career analysis project to get them engaged. And so the objective of this project was to select a field that aligned with their interests and knowledge, or one that was in high demand. So we're talking about, instead of doing an editorial about maybe something they care about, they're highly invested in themselves. And so they'll be highly invested, hopefully, in the direction they're headed at the beginning of their college career. And so the objective was also to then conduct research on a career field and present a persuasive argument in favor of why pursuing this field is a wise choice. And so I just want to take a moment to have you all, you can put it in the chat if you want, but just think for a minute what your own research-based essays or projects, what does that look like in your classes? Because we're going to come back to that idea in a little while. So I put together, and I know in the blurb for this presentation, it was a 3-part research model, but I did some revision in January. And I've expanded the assignment. The assignment to me felt a little thin because, I just kind of pulled it out of my ear in early April of last year and implemented it within 2 weeks. And so how complicated that can be to do with a group of online students who aren't engaged, because you're wondering, are you even reading this message that I'm sending you with this new option? So I started light. And I started with a 3-source annotated bibliography to help them conduct their research. And it included an introduction. It only included 3 source summaries and source citations. The second part is the ChatGPT interview that I designed to help students think through research that they had already done. And my reasoning was kind of, a career field. It's This research is really a lot of facts and bullet points. There's not a whole lot of bias that we need to dig through with ChatGPT. We're probably going to get some pretty accurate answers in a ChatGPT interview about something as benign as, careers. I imagined it would take 1 to 2 hours. It probably takes them less. I use this as a process oriented assignment because, I didn't want to have too strict of a rubric and freak them out when I didn't really know what I wanted yet. So it was kind of like if you do the assignment, you get the points. Was kind of what was in the back of my mind. And
Do you have a cop? Oh, never mind.
I will absolutely give copies of the assignment if you'd like them. I don't have it in Google Docs though, so I'd have
Okay,
to.
thank you.
But initially, I had students summarize their conversation and use screenshots. But I last semester, in the middle of the semester, I figured out that students can actually, there's a little place, students, anybody, there's a little place where you can click and get a URL for that specific conversation. So in the moving forward, I'm going to have them send me that link or put that link in the assignment so that I can look at their conversation. And then they don't have to go through the time of summarizing. It'll be more like, give me 3 to 5 key points that you got out of this exercise. And then the rest of the paper will be a reflection on the process. Because I really want them thinking through, was this a valuable exercise for me? It's not valuable for everybody, but most students enjoyed doing the project and got something out of it. So part 3 is the actual essay. So it's kind of like that traditional essay. It's the culmination of the research. I'm very specific in my grading with a rubric that aligns with course learning objectives to the project. So this is where Lisa can send me a shout out because I'm doing assessment. The new thing is this multimedia presentation, and there it is, where students are going to take that research one step further by creating a presentation to share the research with others. So this will hopefully get students out of that I'm writing a paper mindset for my teacher into, switching gears and thinking about who their audience is and how they can share this really important knowledge that they've come across, that's important to them, and share it with other people who might be interested in that same knowledge. So we'll see how that goes at the end of the semester. So in the chat, can you just put if you have any research or persuasive essays that you assign to your classes? I know not everybody in here is teaching in the classroom, but I'm just curious if anyone can imagine having that has a research essay or some kind of formal essay that requires sources. Can you imagine using this format to use it last night to create rubrics, to imagine your own applying this to your own classroom? So anyone have any comments about that so far, either in the chat or unmute and say hi? Okay. Then I will just move on. So again, I've got the 4 sources and 3 sources. I give them the first 3 sources. They're these career-based websites that actually I have in a research guide that the wonderful librarians put together for me. And so in class, I teach them about these 3 websites, and we've pretty much committed to just using them. If you go in each of them, they just if I always use the middle school teacher. Oh, I think I went in the wrong search engine. All right, let's just find education, adult basic ed. We'll just go there. So, they've got all the tabs. It kind of organizes it for them. And every website is very similar. Some have different information. And so what they're doing is they're going through these websites and they're gathering their information. And they will either write like a 5 to 6 sentence summary, or I give them the option of, having a shorter summary, but then adding bullet points, because there's so much information. There's not always a reason to have to write full sentences. To me, the purpose of this annotated bibliography is to assist them in writing their paper. And so, and it's also an opportunity to have them create their sources in MLA format. So I moved up to 5 because if I'm giving them 3 places where they're just going on a website and searching their job desire, then there's not a ton of research involved. There's probably not a ton of time involved in that. And I really feel like them also looking for articles that might be relevant will be very helpful. And so, and I don't really make it, we're going to do databases in English 102. So I really am okay with a Google search because, again, you're not talking about a lot of biased material necessarily out there on the internet for careers. And, we talk about what reputable sites will have some pretty good articles about future careers. And of course, what's in the news. Is there a specific niche idea that's in their specialization that they want to read up about? It's not as cookie cutter. Sky's the limit on what they can choose. So that's why I'm moving up to 5 sources next time, because I'd like to have 2 articles instead of 1 to supplement these the website research. So, okay, so for the interview then, let's take a deeper look at that. So the purpose of the interview is to give students the opportunity to try ChatGPT using a series of prompts to engage the software. So now at this point, we've got a group of students who maybe only a handful have even heard of ChatGPT. So it's not just about the interview, it's about teaching them how to use the software. And it's also about there's something to be said for, if you're teaching a student about ChatGPT, being able to have their first exposure be under ethical circumstances is probably better than them hearing about it from a friend and then downloading a paper. So it kind of gives them a good base. And so I just came up with these simple starter questions, and I show them how to start their own account, and then they have their conversations. Like I said before, the final product will now include a link to the interview. And so instead of writing a 2-page essay where like half of it is summarizing and screenshots and the other half is a reflection, we kind of speed that up and have more about, I'm more interested in their key points. And we no longer need screenshots. I had some really cool screenshots that I wanted to show, but then they were too blurry. So sometimes I can't always read the students' screenshots. And so being able to link to their interview is so much more helpful. And then really just having them think about what they just did. What did you get out of this conversation? Did you get anything out of it? Did you learn anything new? How did doing this conversation help you more clearly understand your topic? And do you see using AI software in the future? One thing I tell students is, because they're very familiar with Wikipedia and they've spent junior high and high school being told all about how bad it is. And it is not a very good resource for citing it in a research essay. It's not something I would accept in a class. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good tool. And so what I tell students is, I think it's okay for you to go into Wikipedia to get a working knowledge of your topic and see, what the condensed status quo idea is about whatever your topic is. And then you use the ideas in there. If you see a quote that you love, you go find that information in a more reputable source. So you're using Wikipedia as kind of a gateway within your research process, and ChatGPT can act as the same kind of bridge of, okay, it gave me the idea. Now I'm going to go to the sources where I'm going to learn accurate information and have to, invest a little bit more and bridge the research. So I will tell them, don't ever quote ChatGPT. I don't want to see a ChatGPT quote, but if you see something, find it somewhere else. If the information is valuable, you'll be able to find it somewhere else. So that's what the final product looks like. And I just want to give you, I wanted to link to a few student interviews to kind of show you what that looks like. So this computer science student started by asking what he needed to know about a career in computer science. And, we're all very familiar now with the beautiful list that ChatGPT will give you with a little bit of a summary. And then, still consistent with my assignment props, I was asked, he asked, what are the pros of being in computer science? And then they got an answer. And then here's a good question that I hadn't thought to ask, but is computer science important? And then they gain a little bit of insight from there. And could this be all true or some false? I don't know, but it gives them, again, places to think. And then I love this question. What role has computer science played in your creation? And then it starts talking about like the natural language processing and algorithms and all the things that we know about ChatGPT, ethics and bias considerations. And then can a career in computer science negatively impact a person who works in the industry? And burnout, constant learning curve. These are all things that maybe the student really didn't think about. Like how could computer science be difficult for me? Even does diversity issues. Women and underrepresented groups may face challenges. Hey, that maybe I want to find an article that kind of gives me a little bit more information about that. So that's really the pure purpose of this. Is there anything you recommend anyone who is pursuing a career in computer science? So they didn't even like totally complete the question that they've written, and yet ChatGPT kind of figured it out and gave some information. And remember, computer science is not just about technical skills, but also about creativity, innovation, and adaptability. All the things that we say ChatGPT is not. So another student asked about nursing, and this was not as robust an interview, which is why I think when I revise this assignment, I'll start honing in on more like question prompt creation. I now have some interviews to show students. And so you can see they're still getting the same pros and cons. But then she saw in the pros about global opportunities. And so she decided to get more information about that. And that may prompt the student to think, oh, maybe being a travel nurse, like maybe I should find an article about that to kind of better understand nursing in that niche. So the student ended there, so you can see she didn't spend as much time as the previous student, and so that's where I'm thinking more about creating a prompt that gets them deeper into their conversation. I'm in my third semester using this assignment, so we all know that our assignments can be pretty terrible the first time we use them because we don't know what our students are going to give us, and then they get a lot better as we're getting feedback from them. And then this is a research marketing or market research analyst. And again, ChatGPT gave a different outline, a job description, skills and qualities, education and training, and then the industry outlook and career advancement, challenges, networking. She did the token, what are the pros and cons? And then tell me more about career growth. So she saw one of the pros was career growth, and again, got a little more specific. So these are just 3 examples. Oh, this one I like too. What do I do daily as a market researcher? And so she got a little bit more of a breakdown on the day-to-day. So that's why I added that here. So you can see, I would rather scroll through and look at students' questions. I don't have to read all the information that ChatGPT gave them, but I can get a pretty good sense of what their interview went like just by asking for the link instead of having them summarize it. But I do want them to think about those main points, like what really worked for me. So I will still ask for the main points. But again, I'm really interested in that reflection piece for my own personal research. And just because I think writing through reflection produces a lot of engagement and helps students better understand what they've already learned. You know, if you're not really learning if you're not reflecting on your learning. So student feedback. So when I was reading some of the reflections, here are some of the things my students said. I love this one. This assignment brought joy to him. I mean, who doesn't want to bring joy to their students through one of their assignments? I really love that. The student was hesitant, but thought ChatGPT was like a mentor who answered questions thoroughly in seconds, providing insight. And the student felt like they were able to engage in a meaningful conversation. It felt like I was talking to a computer, but it gave me all the information. And I learned from my sources in seconds. So again, this was, just how quickly you can get information. Overall, I enjoyed how the conversation flowed. It elaborated on different answers, and it can be used for good because there were things I did not know that I learned through this interview. And again, I'm always emphasizing, okay, when you learn something from ChatGPT, you have to take it outside of ChatGPT and kind of get that learning confirmed. But again, students have already also done the research, so they're already familiar with what they should be hearing from the AI. They're not going in blind about their topic. This student had done an interview with a speech and language pathologist before she did this conversation. And so a lot of what the expert in her field talked about was confirmed through this interview. So again, there's just a little bit of a deeper learning going on through this process. When I started my interview, I asked the same questions from the rubric, but then I realized I could ask AI anything. So this student had a little bit of a mind-blowing experience and learned more about athletic training when they realized they could ask anything. They didn't just have to use my boring prompts. And then one student acknowledges the stigma because I'm sure I could have used ChatGPT to write this reflection. I love the honesty. But if it's used with pure intent and to guide students, then this may be the most helpful writing tool ever developed. And I'm glad we did this assignment because I don't know if I would have discovered ChatGPT firsthand. So again, I think if we're emphasizing that this is a writing tool to help us generate ideas and think through our research, then students can find it valuable. And of course, like any other tool that our students have, they can also use it for evil or impure intent or whatever you want to say, for cheating, for plagiarism, for whatever. This is just, AI is going to ruin education just like 20 years ago, the internet was going to ruin it. And so we have to approach it cautiously, but we want to make sure that because our students are going to be exposed to it in the workplace, it's not something that we can ignore. And so that is really why I came up with this assignment, was to just give students an ethical means of learning about AI. Okay, so I think I've already talked about this, so I'll just move on. This is a repeat slide just to remind you that now that they've done this interview, they're going to culminate their research into that traditional essay with a specific rubric that aligns course learning objectives to the project. And then they're also going to create a multimedia presentation. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what students come up with next. So having done that, I actually spent a lot of time in January, because my classes didn't start until February, revising this particular assignment. But I also started thinking more deeply about how I could use ChatGPT to help me make better assignments. So, obviously, as somebody who teaches 2 classes, English 101 and 102, I teach several classes at multiple institutions using Blackboard, Canvas, and D2L. And so anytime I make a change to a course, it's kind of a big deal, because there's a lot that goes into creating the assignment, and then there's a lot to go into adapting it to your learning management system, and then also figuring out how the assignment works with your students. And so I've been very slow over the last 20 years of adjusting my classes from semester to semester. And I've been using the same research project assignment. I think I revised it last right after the pandemic. And it really was just to focus students on causes or social issues that came out of the pandemic or were emphasized during that time. And of course, every English teacher is always looking for students to get outside the status quo of any topic and, join a conversation rather than merely repeating it. And I often tell students, if I could have written this paper in 1990, then it's not a good paper. You should just be stating the pros and cons that everybody already knows. You're joining a conversation and elaborating. And so last semester I was doing this. I have this paper that I love. It's students write a script based on like Siskel and Ebert and their conversations. They make their own. We do our own at the movies and English comp. And so those students, it's a group project. So 2 people work together, and I give them a lot of time in class to do it. It's been a very successful and fun assignment. And I always refer to it as a script. And so starting out, students are always really confused. And it's gotten better over the years. But last semester, one student, I overheard her tell her teammate, this project is really fun. It's like making your own podcast. And I thought, oh my gosh, like changing the word script to the word podcast, like completely brings this assignment into the 21st century. And so how can I bring the boring research essay into the 21st century better than I already have? And so I started thinking about, I've got the 3 teenagers always in their rooms with their faces in their phones, doing whatever it is they're doing. And what do they enjoy? YouTube and TikTok and listening to influencers. And so I thought, what if I cast students into the role of an influencer and had them leverage their online presence to raise awareness about something that they're passionate about? And so it could have taken me months to really develop a good assignment by, because I'm really into the research process where, you write, then you put it away, and then you come back and you bring in new insights. Like writing good work takes time. And I don't always have time. So I had this idea and I took it to ChatGPT. And I asked it to create a research assignment where students take on the role of an influencer to share knowledge. And it gave me this objective, which is exactly what I wanted to write, but it wrote it for me. And then it gave me a list of instructions. I, of course, would have thought of selecting a cause, research, understand your audience. I don't know that I would have thought of the research project through key messages. That's an internet influencer multimedia thing. That's not necessarily a research paper thing. Create engaging content is different than, writing an informed paragraph. It's the same, but it's a little bit of a tweak on how you pull together your content. I really hadn't thought much about measuring impact, and that comes from the social media aspect. And then this reflective essay was a good idea too. So I looked through, and then I wanted a little bit of expansion on what do you mean by engaging content? They say it up here. Where is it? Develop a content plan with a mix of text, images, and multimedia, and consider using platforms. And they list some. And I needed more, so I asked for more, and I got you can share content through storytelling. I already talk about storytelling, visual appeal, do that too. Interactive content. That's not part of a regular research paper for me. So, that's new. Encourage your followers to contribute. So now all of a sudden they're asking the people that are seeing their content to talk about it with them. And so, we go through this whole list, and so I used that to put together my assignments. So you can see, select a cause, research the cause, identify key messages, understand your audience / discourse community. Discourse community is like a College DuPage thing. And so, this assignment is for my Monday night College DuPage course. And actually what's really cool about this class this semester, it just started on Monday. I have 6 students in this class. So I'm really going to be able to put myself out there as a student of my own class and get feedback without it like having 20 people to control, make sure they know everything. We're going to create a learning community in this class. And they're going to help me make a better assignment because it's not there yet. And I'm going to give them the opportunity to step outside the regular research paper box and come up with their own research content to be delivered in new ways. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen with that. So they're going to do the traditional essay, and I've pared it down from the 10-page essay to a 6-page essay. And we may even make it shorter. I'm going to just take the pulse of the class and see they need to write an essay that aligns with the learning outcomes of the course. And length isn't necessarily part of that. There has to be extensive research beyond what a 101 class would have. But in this class, it doesn't have to be 10 pages either. And, at COD, they really are more focused on the multimedia aspect. And so that's been really hard for me to incorporate because of, all the work. And that's all the things that I do. But I'm really excited to be able to pull into the 21st century over that. And the multimedia presentation is part 2. And so this is where students are really going to help me figure out what's enough work. I already told my students that everybody's going to create a web page that where they share their research. But one of my ideas for like engaging audiences, obviously we're not going to get a lot of engagement in May. We have to start early. Is because we're such a small class, we're going to be able to everybody, every week or every other week, everyone's going to be able to come up with maybe an article or maybe a question, something that they can post on their social media to see what kind of feedback they get from the people in their communities. And so we're kind of going to I'm tweaking, like I'm learning as I go, I'm figuring it out as I go. But we're going to be creating multimedia content throughout the semester that will culminate in the final. And so, and here's that. Oh yeah. Okay. We already looked at that. So, and then at the end of the process, they're going to turn in a reflective essay that discusses their experience as an influencer. And so I'm just going to be able to get a snapshot of how they've experienced this class over the last 12 weeks. And that will help me plan for future classes and continue to improve my work and my teaching. So that's kind of the project, the post-career analysis project on my horizon. And so, maybe I'll be back next year to talk about how that worked. I will have had 2 semesters then to kind of work through that. So that is all I have. I'm happy to share my assignments with you. They're in Word docs right now, so I would need to email them to you, but that's my email address. And just know that they're living documents. I'm constantly revising and trying to improve them through the feedback I get from others. And so now I'll just open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions, comments? I'm a little behind on the chat.
I was going to say, Gina, there's a few questions that come up in the chat just now.
Okay. So can you guys see my chat on the screen?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Will the students be allowed to use AI to create the multimedia assignment? That's a really good question. I think like I allow students to use AI for topic generation. And then beyond that, I try to keep it really small. Like I don't want to give any blanket, like, oh, everybody can do this. But like, for example, a student who has dyslexia, I've had that where the student has written a narrative about themselves and it's not quite there yet. And I had one student, mid-30s, going into engineering, had been a blue collar worker for 15 years. And he said to me, I write like an 8th grader. And I took one of his paragraphs from his narrative and I put it in ChatGPT and asked him to fix it. And you should have seen the look on his face. It's like everything that was in his head got fixed with what he was reading. Like those were his ideas. ChatGPT had just helped make the language run more smoothly for him. That's not something that I would tell my whole class to do. That's more of an individual prescription, so to speak. Students who write in their native language can use ChatGPT to translate for them and to help. Or they're thinking in their native language, they're writing in English, and then they're having ChatGPT. It's leveling the playing field for students with other, who English is their second language or they have learning disabilities. Because their knowledge is there, they just can't always get it in the traditional format. So I do allow students to use AI, but I recommend it very cautiously. Another example will be in my research paper class, I'm going to allow them to use AI to summarize half of their annotated bibliography sources. But then I want them to write a reflection on, was this better than reading the whole article? Or, ask them if they have a more difficult article to ask ChatGPT to rewrite it at a 12th grade level or an 8th grade level or whatever, just to kind of help them better understand it. But yeah, I don't want paragraphs that are created in AI. But in a multimedia assignment, they might rely on AI a little bit more. And as long as we're talking about it and working through it together, I am okay with that. So Joe said, one of the greatest benefits of ChatGPT is that it supersedes Google searches and the user skips the unwanted sponsor, advertising, spam, misinformation of Google. It's more time efficient. However, the user still has to be careful with the somewhat slanted source of ChatGPT's knowledge. Who's inputting that data? Yeah, and that data is from 2021 and before. So we also have to keep that in mind. Although I've taken articles that were written after that time, put the article in ChatGPT and asked it to summarize that article, and it'll do it if you give it the content. So there's workarounds. Oh, Tammy, I love you. What tools will your students use to create their website? That is April Jeannie's problem. I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe I should give you a call. I was thinking Google Sites. And I was also going to ask them what they think, because I'm a little weak in that area. And so this just shows you all how much I've grown, because I never would have put an assignment out there without knowing every aspect of it. And I've come to be a person who puts myself out there and then, let students know my limitations and asks for help. So we'll see. But I'll be in touch, Tammy, to get your input on that.
I'm laughing. I actually, do they have to define what they have to use? Maybe they have a tool that they already use or have access to. Maybe you just give them a few suggestions on what they could use.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. Google Sites just came to mind because I know we pretty much all have it.
Right, and it's easy for
and
them.
They will. But yeah, I'm definitely open to them teaching me about what they know, because they probably know more than I do in that area.
Maybe.
So good question. And then Microsoft Bing Copilot is a more up-to-date version of ChatGPT. Does anyone know when that is coming out? Because I've heard of Copilot, but I haven't.
It's actually out right now. If you go to that link that I put in the chat there, that is the Copilot link, and it is very current, whereas ChatGPT has about a 2-year age. It's like 2 years old in their data sets, where this one is a little bit more current. And if you look at it and just go to that site, you can explore. There's a whole lot of information. It's Microsoft's version of it, so there may be some additional security features there too. We're kind of exploring that with ECC admin right now.
Well, and I'm assuming in the coming years that it's going to be part of, students are going to open up Microsoft Word, and there it's going to be.
Yeah, and it actually is a lot of your search engines right now. If you use a Microsoft search engine, like an MSN, it is there too. And it will summarize, kind of like what Amazon does with certain reviews, like this is the most searched review or whatever. So this Copilot is something I just threw it out there to explore, because it's kind of a neat tool as well. Very similar and more up to date than ChatGPT.
Kind of the next thing on my list is to get away from ChatGPT and start looking at some of these other tools. I just heard today that Google Bard has a new name.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is too, is if you put one into Microsoft Copilot, put one into ChatGPT, you get different, it's the same, but it's different sounding answers. So kind of fun.
Ooh, that sounds like a good assignment.
Yeah, like do a comparison, that would be good.
I gotta write that down. Compare 3 AI answers. That's enough information for me to remember. Yes, thank you for that, Anne.
Of course, thank you. This has been great.
So that's all I have. We're closing in on 2 o'clock. And so I'll give you like 3 minutes of your life back. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Feel free to email me if you have questions or want to keep the conversation going.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
All right.
Okay.